Well, for all the talk of Scott Morrison's so-called secret ministries, he didn't do much with them, apart from one particular instance. Within the resources portfolio, he acted to effectively cancel the Pepper-Levin exploration licence off the coast of New South Wales. So, what's happened since? It seems likely Labor in government now is going to reach a settlement with those hoping they can one day develop Pepper-Levin to cancel the cancellation, if you like. So where does it leave this as a policy? Joining me now is Nationals MP Keith Pitt, once upon a time the Resources Minister. Thanks for your time.
Great to be with you, Tom.
So the cancellation set to be overturned, meaning it's up in the air again. Do you welcome that?
Well, I don't have any additional information other than the media reports from last week. I've read them like everyone else. I'm not being briefed by the departments. But what the reports clearly say is that the matter is still before the court awaiting orders. I won't be making an extensive comment. I'm happy to talk about process and how those things are approved generally.
But as a politician still in the parliament, you can have a view as of today whether you think the Pepper-Levin exploration licence should be one open or whether it should just be vetoed by the federal government. What's your view on that today?
Well, as I said, this is before the courts, but my view is that the process needs to be followed. It is very specific. It's outlined in the legislation, and I would assume that the Labor Party would now follow that process as well. It is a joint authority, so it does involve New South Wales, but the Federal Minister does have the ability to override the recommendation from New South Wales.
Right, but do you have a personal view? I mean, everyone's talking about a gas shortage. You've been talking about it as well. Would this be the sort of thing that we should be open to exploring?
Well, as a former minister, mate, I don't have a personal view on matters in which I'm directly involved that are before the courts.
But you're not today. You can have a view today on it.
I can have a view about gas in general. I'm happy to talk about that. And what we've seen from Labor is that they have cut support for developing gas across the country that we put in place, whether that is in the Beetaloo or others, whether it's strategic basin plans or others, and yet you still have Victoria in particular who are not developing their own resources, and as a result,
when you say
they've run out.
What have they cut?
Well, they've cut money in the budget that was there to support the development of basins. So in the Beetaloo, it was around the drilling program to make sure that was brought forward, and that was solely about bringing the Beetaloo Basin online earlier to provide the gas from what is one of the biggest gas plays in the world.
There's been warnings for years about supply. What did you do as Minister that actually brought any supply on in your time?
Well, that was the first. That was one. So as part of the.
But that didn't bring supply on. At no stage was supply brought on.
Well, it's part of the Beetaloo Basin plan to get it on at least 2 years earlier. We provided support for exploration and drilling because that gives certainty. That means that people will invest and they will bring on the Beetaloo Basin. We have strategic basin plans across a range of basins. A number of those have been cut by the Labor government. We were working in part of Angus Taylor's portfolio for the development of connecting infrastructure, particularly pipelines, that would ensure that we can
I'm hearing plans, I'm hearing we were working, but nothing happened, did it?
Not at all. There was certainly exploration in the Beetaloo. Wells were drilled. They were very positive, as the reports that I got and what I saw in ASX reports. And there is a significant gas resource there, as there is in Victoria. But in Victoria, you have a Victorian government which has stopped exploration. And
which is not Federal Labor's fault, is it?
Well, Federal Labor will be involved, and they could quite easily ring and say, hey, how about we push on with stuff which is a
Victoria
joint venture?
could say no. I mean, I'm sure the Federal Coalition tried that as well, and Victoria said no.
Well, we gave them a significant amount of money as part of the energy deal, which is under Angus Taylor's portfolio. That hasn't been followed through, as far as I'm aware.
Well, yeah, but doesn't that show the Victorian government isn't for turning on this?
Well, it shows the Victorian government is very clearly not going to use gas.
So it's not the federal government's fault.
But that will mean a shortfall in Victoria.
Right, but my point is what the Victorian government's attitude is the same now under Federal Labor as it was under the Federal Coalition. If you have a problem with it, it's the Victorian government you have an issue with, not Federal Labor.
Well, there's two. We did provide support for strategic basin plans onshore. They are in state and territory areas.
But they didn't want to use that support.
And the Federal Labor government has cut them from the budget. But that's just a statement of fact.
Victorian Labor wasn't going to do it anyway.
But this is the point, Tom. You want more gas, but you need it in the place where the demand is. The further away you are, the more expensive it is.
Yeah, but they were saying they didn't want to take that opportunity up.
Well, they've had a moratorium for 10 years. And as a result, they're running out of gas.
All right. So surely your beef's Victorian Labor.
Well, it's currently Victorian Labor, but Federal Labor's got a lot of influence, particularly when it comes to funding.
Just on Pepper-Levin finally, there were reports you wanted to resign or considered resigning over being overruled. Why didn't you?
Tom, when you're a minister in the cabinet at a time where the country is in the middle of a pandemic, a 100-year event, it's incredibly fast moving. But ultimately your decisions are ones around the national interest. They're not about whether you're personally aggrieved or not, it's about what's in the best interest of the country. They're the decisions that I made.
So you you needed to continue as minister in the best interest of the country?
Well, what I'm saying is that we're in a significantly difficult position. The resources sector was growing exponentially in terms of its ability to contribute to the economy.
All right.
We had some 1.2 million Australians relied on that for jobs, and those levels of employment and economic development are around confidence, and you've got to maintain it.
Cost of living.
Hey,
What's the big issue in your community?
it's energy, it's electricity cost, and it's food and fuel. The fuel's come off a little bit with the change in the exchange rate.
Right. So on energy, the federal government's plan has brought down estimated bills. Do you welcome that?
Well, it hasn't happened. We've seen significant increases in recent weeks.
But you
and months.
can't stop this train overnight. We know that.
Well, you can if you're Queensland Labor, that they control the market, that they own.
So again, you beef state Labor here rather than federal.
Well, the federal government is intervening in the gas price, which has a direct impact. They're intervening in the coal price, which has a direct impact. And in Queensland, the government-owned corporations are government-owned corporations. So that price, particularly in the regions north of Gympie, there is there is one retailer for the majority of Queenslanders, and that is Ergon. It's owned by the state government.
So
They set
again,
the price.
your issue there for Queenslanders, for your voters, the biggest issue is the state government right now.
The biggest issues are firstly the state government and the price they set and the amount of profits that they are taking out of Queensland electricity networks.
Okay.
And secondly, intervention from federal Labor.
Well, that's brought the estimated cost down. Why is that a problem?
And it hasn't happened.
I know, but all we can say is here's the estimated cost, here are the predictions coming through, it's lower. So why is that a problem?
You've got to put $1 billion into coal, estimated, and it could well be more than that. You've got to pay the gas companies, and at the moment they can't offer contracts because they don't know what their costs are. So it's incredibly difficult to do a long-term.
But for the consumer out there, all we know so far, all that's on the table is the predicted cost has gone down, and you're saying that's bad.
No, what I'm saying is Queensland Labor could change it today if they weren't taking.
I'm talking about the federal
profits.
government intervention.
Well, the federal
Focusing
government's
on
done a deal with Queensland. They could have asked for those prices to be reduced, and they could literally do it today if they took less profits.
All right, Keith Pitt, thanks for your time.
Mate, it's great to be there.